The top story, General Motors is all set to pull out of South Africa. The car maker announced its plans to cease the sales of all Chevrolet vehicles in South Africa by the end of 2017. The company has, however, managed to negotiate the sale of its local manufacturing facility to Isuzu Motors. The pullout will mark the end of the U.S. multinational's 13-year tenure in South Africa, which saw the introduction of the Chevrolet, Hummer and Cadillac brands, as well as the production of Isuzu and a number of Opel and Chevrolet products. The company has made the announcement in a bid to boost its restructuring plans. Let's get more details with regards to the story now. For that, we are joined by ANN7's business editor, Mr. Clive Ramatabile-Smith. He joins us on the phone line. Good afternoon to you, Clive. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Just expand and give us more details with regards to the reason General Motors is all set to pull out of South Africa.
Well, top of the afternoon to you, Abigail, and to the rest of our viewers as well. Let's just jump straight into it. Really sad news, I suppose, to those of you who are big fans of the General Motors range of motor vehicles. And I suppose it has been and had rather been a very difficult last 5 years for General Motors in South Africa. And particularly, they mentioned the fact that in the emerging markets, that includes Brazil and India as well, it has been very difficult for them to compete. So it was no surprise, I suppose, to have a look and see that they've actually pulled out of those markets as well. But what did this Detroit automaker say that was perhaps maybe worrying and should be worrying to some of the local brands as well, was that it's not seeing enough sales. I mean, if you look at the 49,000 vehicles that they sold last year between South Africa and India, and obviously the Chinese market is slightly different. They're more profitable for them because there's a huge, vast new middle class that is interested in their kind of brand of vehicles, like your Chevrolets and your Hummers and the likes of Isuzu. So they've started to move into areas where they know they'll be profitable, where obviously engineeringly there'll be more cost-cutting involved. We must not forget that this is a company that was obviously helped by the U.S. government to get back into the black following that dramatic and terrible turmoil time that they experienced back in 2008 when they went into bankruptcy. So they're back. The president, Dan Amon, was speaking to Reuters and explaining the reason for the restructuring and the fact that they cannot continue working in unprofitable markets. And so the new focus has to be America, China, and some of the smaller participants within the developed market. So it is no surprise, Abigail, and we are hoping to see them pulling out. They were not doing much of an investment in actual fact in South Africa, just about $250 million that they had invested in this particular country in terms of productivity. Most of their cars were in actual fact being imported from outside of the country so that they can sell here locally. So it has been a very, very tough time. Competition has been coming through from Audi, has been coming through from BMW and the likes. So it's a very, very tough market for them, and that's the reason why they've decided that by the end of 2017, unfortunately, this famous brand will be restructuring and going back to the U.S. Perhaps maybe it's a Trump call to get America great again.
Clive, with regards to the restructuring plan being given as a reason, do we have any details with regards to what the future holds with regards to the restructuring plan and what happens now?
Yeah, well, what they've explained to us is that, they've found it increasingly expensive to compete in emerging markets. This is outside of China, because obviously that's been described as emerging still because of the vast majority of people coming into the middle class. The chief executive, Ms. Bara, was talking in Delhi last year, in actual fact, talking about the investments that has made. It's made over $1 billion worth of investments in emerging markets. We're talking about the new Chevrolet models that were being shipped to those particular markets. Unfortunately, they're not getting the kind of competition that they need. I can add between you and I and our viewers as well that the likes of Ford, which also is from Detroit, by the way, from the same town, but they've been very much competitive. They've changed their style and strategy when it comes to how they design their vehicles. If you know that very well, the Bakkie market in South Africa has been hugely dominated by three major motor companies. It's Isuzu, which is obviously part of GM, Ford in the likes of the Ford Ranger, and also Toyota in the likes of the Hilux. But however, what has happened now this year, if you look at this year's numbers and last year's, Ford Ranger has become #1 in the country, the most selling car in the country. So that on its own tells you that perhaps this time now, it seems like GM is losing their touch with the South African market. And that's the reason why they're pulling back, and they're restructuring it to go back to the US, to invest more there, to take this R1 billion, wrap it up, and go into markets where they actually have a market that they can actually sell to, like China, Sweden, and also the United Kingdom.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Clive, for unpacking those details for us and making us a clearer understanding of what's happening here. ANN7's business editor, Mr. Clive Ramatabela-Smith, joining us on the phone line, just unpacking details around General Motors all set to be pulling out of South Africa. The car maker announced its plans to cease the sale of Chevrolet vehicles in South Africa by the end of 2017. The company has made the announcement in a bid to boost its restructuring plans. Stay tuned to ANN7 for more details and developments.